Welcome back to another FPL team selection, this time out of Game Week 31, and there is another deadline tomorrow on Tuesday, so there's such a quick turnaround, and the idea is to get the main piece of content for FPL and UCL Fantasy out on the channel as usual. I'm currently on holiday, so the microphone might sound a bit different, the sound quality won't be to the exact same standards, but I'm trying my very best. Let me know if you want to see all the main piece of FPL and UCL Fantasy content. So the team selection today, the deadline stream tomorrow, and then of course all of the UCL Fantasy Limitless, Wildcard and team selection videos alongside the deadline stream. If you end up enjoying this video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. RMS to get this video to over 200 likes and also to keep on pushing towards 23k subscribers, which we hope to achieve by the end of next week. And be sure to leave a 5-star review on Spotify and Amazon Music. Follow me on those platforms. The same goes for my Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, the FPL Challenge League, and Drafthound. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Goalkeepers have been a big problem all season, and Areola sums this up perfectly because a lot of his hauls have been when he's on my bench, and when I start him, he just doesn't seem to return. And this time round, he was subbed off at half-time due to an injury. Fabianski was already warming up around 50 minutes before half-time. They made that substitution as they approached the second half, and he got 2 points. But maybe that was a blessing in disguise as West Ham fumbled that 3-1 lead and they ended up losing 4-3. So Areola was able to get 2 points, and that actually was enough to outscore Dubravka, who played the entire 90 minutes. Areola making 3 saves in the first half, and that was enough to secure a 2-pointer, which seems like gold amongst goalkeepers this week. So Areola is a doubt for the next couple of weeks. Let's see if he's available by Game Week 31. But if not, the plan was always to start Dubravka regardless with the home fixture against Everton, whilst West Ham host Tottenham in a London derby. My entire backline was awful this week with one exception, but we'll get to that very soon. Pedro Porro got another 2-pointer as Luton Town took the lead within 3 minutes and Spurs made a comeback. I think we all expected it, but Pedro Porro wasn't involved and he's been quite a poor asset in FPL since Game Week 23. So you are hoping for a bit of a turnaround, but with West Ham away next, Nottingham Forest at home could be decent, but then it's Newcastle away and a blank in Game Week 34. Only the doubles later in the season are going to compensate or give you any reason to keep Pedro Porro or any of these Spurs defenders. The next one was actually on course for a clean sheet, but then that was wiped out towards the very end against Everton. So Zabani got 2 points. I think if he was able to keep that clean sheet, it would have been massive this week for those that started Zabani. And of course, if he had Kirkers and started him, fair play. He was subbed off around 60 minutes, but was able to bank that clean sheet. So a bit of redemption and retribution there for Kirkers owners. Maybe not enough, but it's still something. And Zabani and the rest of the Bournemouth defenders, with the exception of Smith, ended up blanking. It was Smith, of course, who got the assist for that Seamus Coleman late own goal to win Bournemouth that game. Now the final defender and another injury is Nathan Ake. He was subbed off very early against Arsenal and it looks like his problem could be serious and he could be out for some time. So Ake could actually enter sell territory and he got 1 point despite Man City keeping a clean sheet against Arsenal in a 0-0 stalemate. So very disappointing stuff from my back line. Even just one return would have actually turned this into an exceptional week for me. The midfield was the difference maker this week. Heung-min Son epitomised that with that late goal to secure all 3 bonus points and a double-digit haul against Luton Town. And unfortunately, he was overshadowed by one certain player, another template captaincy pick, so to speak. And I think these two, alongside Mohamed Salah, were the best captaincy options on paper. They all delivered, but the next one was the best of them all, and that is Cole Palmer with a 15-point haul against Burnley. And sometimes football comes down to these fine margins. Burnley went down to 10 men and conceded a penalty within the same passage of play. And you have to say that was very harsh and unfortunate for Burnley. It shouldn't have been a red card and the penalty was extremely soft to say the least. And that played a big part in Cole Palmer's haul. But either way, I was very confident he would do something. There's no denying that. But for him to get a 15-point haul might have been massively down to those factors influenced by the referee's decision, but there you go. I think both Son and Palmer were great captaincy choices. It could have gone either way, and ultimately both of them did extremely well, but Palmer was even better in Game Week 30. The next 2 midfielders include Anthony Gordon, who was on course for greatness with 2 FPL assists and an extra one, an official assist, to make it a hat-trick, but he got a red card in extra time, and both yellow cards were extremely foolish and unnecessary, and Anthony Gordon will now be suspended for Game Week 31 with that fixture against Everton at home, his former club, and we know how good Anthony Gordon is at St James's Park. But the only saving grace about that red card is the fact that the yellow he picked up against West Ham United actually doesn't really count now. So he's back down to 8 yellow cards. He would need 2 extra to be suspended for 2 games. But guess what? He's already suspended and he lost out on 3 points because of that red card in this game. But ultimately, Anthony Gordon delivered yet again. But it was a bittersweet moment, I think, for Anthony Gordon owners, as it could have been 11 points at the very least, potentially up to 13 or 14 with bonus points included. So Anthony Gordon delivered, but it was a bittersweet moment, and I don't think Anthony Gordon owners could really fully enjoy that because of the red card. The final midfielder actually ended up blanking, and the same goes for my 5th midfielder on my bench, and that was Phil Foden, who was subbed off around 60 minutes, and he was hooked off very early. I was surprised by that substitution. I think it was a mistake, but in the end, Pep Guardiola is one of the best managers in the world, and it was a 0-0 draw between Man City and Arsenal. Not much happened in that game, and Foden was limited to just 1 key pass throughout. He didn't attempt any dribbles, had no shots whatsoever, and it was a very quiet game for him and the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, Erling Haaland, Saka, and every single Arsenal and Man City attacker. But now there's only 3 forwards left to complete this squad and to show you how I did in Game Week 30. But in the end, it's not too shabby, and it was enough to secure a green arrow. Another injury which took place in Game Week 30 was to Ollie Watkins, who sustained a hamstring issue, and that could suggest he might be out for a few weeks, but we don't know the full extent of that problem, and Unai Emery relayed this in his press conference. But Watkins was subbed off so early that he was another one, like Nathan Ake, who got 1 point only, and Areola is another one, subbed off after the first half, but he got 3 saves to get 2 points in the end. So a lot of early injuries that took place. Anthony Gordon's suspension doesn't help, despite the fact that the yellow cards have been toned down, and he also kind of eliminates any benching headaches you may have in Game Week 31 as well. But Ollie Watkins is definitely entering sell territory. By the time he returns, though, with some decent fixtures sprinkled in between, like Brentford and Bournemouth, he could haul in those games. But facing Man City away next, and then Arsenal away in Game Week 33, a lot of us would have sold Watkins regardless, especially to fund moves in the midfield to the likes of Salah, who's going to be so template in this upcoming deadline. The next forward was the only one to have delivered in my forward line, and that's Solanke with 7 points. He picked up a yellow card but got a bonus point and a goal, and Solanke has been so consistent for his price. I'm very impressed by him this season, and he's still a great option up until Game Week 35. I think that's the point where you start to sell Solanke, but he's a great option for double Game Week 34, arguably the best forward who has a double in that game week. And the final forward was Erling Haaland, who was limited to 0.24 XG against Arsenal. He had 2 shots, both off target, and across all 3 games against Arsenal, I believe his XG was around 0.28. So he has been very ineffective against the Gunners this season, and in one particular game, he produced exactly 0 XG, but we all know what he can do. I'm backing to do very well against Aston Villa, Luton Town, and Crystal Palace over the next 3. And even beyond that, you've got Brighton and some good fixtures for Manchester City. And of course, Man City will double around Game Week 37. So I'd really back Erling Haaland in the long term, but he has been very disappointing. And you could make a case that for 14 million, he's not justifying that price tag at the moment. And we've had that conversation throughout the entire season. But now let me show you who I captain, my rank, and the overall points before we move on to the Game Week 31 team selection. I spoke about the temptation to captain Cole Palmer in my recent videos and podcasts for the team selection, but I stayed with Heung-min Son, and I'm very happy with his haul. 10 points, I would have taken that at the start of the week, especially considering how the game was going, and it took a late goal by Heung-min Son to secure that haul. I got 63 points overall, and that was enough to increase my rank from around 306k to 282,000, and that's 1,780 points for the season. And I did have Saliba on my bench with that 7-pointer. He was third, so there was no chance he was coming on for me, but I just think with Nathan Ake, that was very unfortunate, as he would have hauled with that clean sheet. And then you look at Areola and Watkins also picking up injuries, and Anthony Gordon being sent off in extra time. So quite a bit went wrong, but it wasn't enough to deter or kind of reduce or mitigate that green arrow. But but it does cause some problems in the future. Luckily enough, I do have 2 free transfers, so rolling this week might have been the right call. I would have bought in Connor Bradley and potentially benched Zabani, so in the end it doesn't really affect things too much, but Bradley got 2 bonus points despite conceding, and he created so many chances against Brighton, and now he's got Sheffield United at home next. But I'm not really too fond of Bradley in Game Week 34, as Trent could be back by next week to face Manchester United in Game Week 32 or by Game Week 33. So in the end, if I want to go for Liverpool defender, Virgil van Dijk is the target. I'll be showing you some transfer plans next and what I'm currently going for as my team selection for Game Week 31. As I mentioned earlier in this video and podcast, I'm going for Dubravka over Areola for a few reasons. I think Newcastle have a better chance of a clean sheet than West Ham against Tottenham, and the second reason is because Areola is yellow flagged, and I think Fabianski will play anyway. But if I'm being completely honest, I don't see many clean sheets for Newcastle in any game week, let alone in Game Week 31 against Everton. I think they're going to concede, so I'm not expecting much on this front. And if I could go to a David Raya, for example, I would do it right now, but I don't think it's worth a -4 hit at this moment in time. I might look at something similar though in Game Week 34 when Arsenal have that double against Wolves away and Chelsea at home. And looking at the Game Week 35 wildcard, which is my current plan, I'm not too sure if I'll go for Dubravka or any Newcastle defender, but they have good fixtures in Game Week 35 and 36 and a double in 37. But by that stage, Nick Pope could be back and Dubravka won't offer any value whatsoever. I also don't have much confidence in my defensive line, including Pedro Porro away to West Ham. I've got a bit of a benching dilemma despite the injuries to Nathan Ake and Alfie Doughty, but I'm currently going for the Spaniard. I'm not expecting a clean sheet here either, and in terms of attacking potential, he hasn't really shown much in terms of pure FPL output in the last couple of months, so I'm hoping for something a bit better this time round. My second choice includes Saliba, who kept that clean sheet against Man City, third on my bench last week, and now he's facing Luton Town at home. It's a great opportunity here for Arsenal to keep that clean sheet and for Saliba to get a decent return, at least 6 points. But Luton Town are on a great streak of scoring in so many consecutive games. I think it's 19 now after that early goal against Tottenham Hotspur. They could make it 20 against the Gunners. And the last time Luton Town didn't score was all the way back in November, I believe, against Manchester United. So let's see if Arsenal can keep a clean sheet, but that would be massive this week, although some people will have double Arsenal defence. And my final defender is Zabani at home to Everton. I'm not expecting a clean sheet here whatsoever. So really, this defensive line looks quite shaky, but I will be making some improvements over the next few weeks. And the two main targets include Ait-Nouri and Virgil van Dijk. With 2 free transfers, it makes complete sense to go for Mohamed Salah. It's just a question of who do I downgrade to make that possible and who do I offload to buy Salah, because budget isn't going to be a luxury for me at this stage since I have Erling Haaland and quite an expensive squad overall. But he's facing Sheffield United at home. He's going to be the most captain option by far, and his effective ownership is going to be ridiculous. I'd be very surprised if it isn't over 150%. I think it's going to be a great option this week. The same goes for Saka, who could be a nice differential, you could argue, since so many people will gravitate towards Salah, and rightfully so. And Saka was subbed off quite early against Man City, around 70, 80 minutes due to fatigue. He just came back from an injury problem, and Arteta said that he wasn't ready to play the full 90. Will Saka be ready to play the full 90 in Game Week 31? Maybe not, especially if Arsenal are already 3 or 4 nil up, or they're up by 3 or 4 goals. So that could be a problem as well, especially if you're looking to captain. But people might level that with Salah and talking about maybe his returns during Ramadan. But I believe at this time last year, he scored a brace against Leeds, he scored against Arsenal, and he blanked against Chelsea. So 3 goals in 3 games, that's not too shabby whatsoever. He could get 3 goals alone against Sheffield United. My third midfielder is Cole Palmer, another home fixture against Manchester United, and he scored earlier this season at Old Trafford despite Man United winning that game. And Chelsea are very unreliable. On one end of the pitch, they create a lot of chances but fail to convert enough of them, and on the other side, they make some basic errors and they're quite easy to be got at from a defensive point of view. But Cole Palmer is a shining light in an otherwise dismal season for the Blues. Who knows where they would be without him, because I have to say Cole Palmer has been one of the best signings, and there have been a lot of penalties along the way, but that's one thing he has. And Chelsea have been awarded the most penalties this season, which further boosts Palmer's appeal, and he's essential from now until the end of the season with 2 upcoming doubles. The final midfielder is Phil Foden at home to Aston Villa, and that does mean I'm looking to sell Heung-min Son in order to buy Mohamed Salah. I've still got Anthony Gordon, who will be on my bench with that suspension. If he wasn't suspended, I would have a big benching dilemma on my hands this week, especially with one of my forward transfers, which does mean I have got rid of Ollie Watkins as well. This is certainly not set in stone, but I'm considering a differential of Matheus Cunha, who doubles in Gameweek 34 and has good fixtures up until Gameweek 35. It's Burnley away next, and Cunha is now completely in the clear. There's no yellow flag, but will he start the game and play 60 plus minutes? That's the big concern. If I see any news that suggests that Cunha will start and play a decent number of minutes, I would look to buy him for Ollie Watkins, and that gives me enough money to upgrade Heung-min Son to Mohamed Salah. But the alternatives lie in Mateta, who also doubles in Gameweek 34, and Muniz, who doesn't double. Instead, he will face Liverpool at home in Gameweek 34. But this week, it would be Nottingham Forest away. So I think it really comes down to Cunha, Mateta, or Muniz. And if I had to rank them right now in terms of the most likely to enter my team, it would be Cunha first, Muniz second, and Mateta in third place. My second forward remains Solanke at home to Crystal Palace. A lot of home fixtures here with the exception of Pedro Porro and Cunha, but that could change and I could easily build an entire starting 11 full of home players, but I'm not too bothered about that really, because with the likes of Cunha, he's a great option up until Gameweek 35. It's just a question of fitness, which puts me off ever so slightly, and with Solanke, those fitness issues are fully behind him, according to Areola, heading into the Gameweek 30 fixture, where he ended up scoring against Everton. And the final player and piece of the jigsaw is Erling Haaland at home to Aston Villa. He did blank the last time these two teams faced, and it was a 1-0 win for the Villains. And of course, Man City just came off the back of a goalless draw against Arsenal. I'm expecting Man City to score a couple of goals here, and Aston Villa are severely missing the likes of Kamara, and they might have kept a clean sheet and won comfortably against Wolves in Gameweek 30, but I'm not backing them to get any result whatsoever at the Etihad, despite Man City being a bit shaky in this stadium with a lot of draws this season. My entire bench is either injured or suspended. Areola yellow flagged, Ake is currently orange flagged and he could be out for several weeks. Alfie Doughty is also flagged and I was going to sell him anyway in the next couple of weeks. And then Anthony Gordon is suspended and he probably would have started over either Cunha, Mateta or Muniz, whoever I bring in. But now that kind of benching dilemma is eradicated through his red card and I have quite a decent base. I'm very happy with this team and my plan is to wildcard in Gameweek 35 and bench boost in 37. I wasted a free hit in 29. The only good thing about that chip is the fact that a lot of those players I don't have to own now and they would have been sells from Gameweek 30 onwards and perhaps forced the wildcard even earlier. But having said that, a free hit would have been nice, but I've got quite a decent platform to build a very strong Gameweek 34 squad full of a lot of doublers. I could get to 9 players very easily, 9 doublers, and I could even get to 10 with a -4 hit, potentially even 11, depending on my next few transfers. And the current plan is to buy Salah and Matheus Cunha. And in terms of the captaincy, there's no surprise here whatsoever. Salah is my current captain and Saka is my vice. I think that's quite locked in, but my second transfer for the forward isn't. So it's between Cunha, Mateta and Muniz. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. With no free hit in Gameweek 34, would you go for Cunha or Mateta to boost those doublers? Or would you just go for Muniz to save a bit of extra money? And would you even take a -4 hit to buy Virgil van Dijk, as I'll show you very soon? But first off, I'm going to show you Drafthound and what they're suggesting for my team before looking at fpl.team and showing you an alternative transfer plan which involves a -4 hit. There is a link to Drafthound in the description below. I'd highly recommend you check it out. And many of you have signed up using my link and talked about how useful this resource is. My personal favorite tool is the player rankings, but there are so many different ones and you might have a different personal favorite. And on screen, you can see the transfer suggestions and they're talking about selling Gordon and Areola, both of whom are flagged, to McAllister and Kelleher, and I do like those suggestions. I think McAllister is a very nice differential, as pointed out by viewers of this channel. Even for Argentina, during the international break, he scored against Costa Rica, so he's in fine goal-scoring form, and he's also getting some assists, as he demonstrated in Gameweek 30. And in terms of the optimization tool, so this green icon, they're talking about putting Saka and Saliba in for Ake and Gordon, and also to captain Erling Haaland with Palmer as my vice, but that's without the transfer of Salah and Cunha. If we go to player rankings very quickly, I can just bring in Salah, transfer in, and we're going to sell Heung-min Son. And then we're going to search for Cunha, who isn't going to be highly rated, 3.1 expected points. I'm going to bring him in for Ollie Watkins. And then if we change this yet again, yep, Salah's going to become the captain. He's also top of the player rankings for this week, with Haaland second, Palmer third, Son fourth, and Diaz fifth. He's another one who's been very impressive recently, and he might be even better than Darwin Nunez. And I'm looking at Diaz for that double in Gameweek 34. Then we have Havertz, Darwin Nunez, Odegaard, Kelleher, and Ben White to complete an illustrious top 10, you could argue. But in terms of expected points, it's 70.1 according to Drafthound, and the average ownership is actually going down with that purchase of Cunha, who's a massive differential with less than 2% ownership. The alternative transfers I mentioned earlier include going for Virgil van Dijk for Nathan Ake and buying Manice instead of Cunha, and I'd still be buying Salah for Son, so that would be for a -4 hit. I don't need to take the -4 hit, of course, since Zabani could be enough, and even if he gets 2 points, you just take it on the chin. But I really back Liverpool to keep a clean sheet against Sheffield United and to score a lot of goals in the process. If I could, I'd even buy a third Liverpool player in a Luis Diaz or perhaps a McAllister in the heart of the midfield, but Dubravka would still be in goal, a back three of Van Dijk, Pedro Porro and Saliba, and it's between Pedro Porro and Zabani for that final defender slot. Then it's Foden, Palmer, Salah and Saka as the same midfield four, with Manice, Haaland and Solanke up front. I could go for Mateta instead of Manice, but I want to see your thoughts in the comment section. Who do you prefer between Manice, Mateta and Cunha? And would you take a -4 hit to go for Virgil van Dijk? If so, the only way I can still buy him and also Cunha is to sell Pedro Porro and not Nathan Ake. And with the injury, which could see Ake out for some time, it might be worth selling him instead, keeping Porro for that fixture against Nottingham Forest at home before selling him as well, and also bolstering my Gameweek 34 prospects and increasing the number of doublers. Like I mentioned earlier, the two defenders I'm really looking at are Virgil van Dijk and Ait Nouri. So those two are at the very top of my shopping list for the defence. But really the priority for me is Salah this week. After that, it would be a forward like a Cunha, Manice or Mateta to fund that. And of course, going for more Liverpool players, including Diaz in the heart of the midfield. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. The expected points is 68.3 with this squad, and it's slightly higher than it would be with my proposed transfers talked about earlier, since Cunha isn't highly rated due to the expected minutes. But it's also worth noting that the -4 hit does take this team back, and it would actually end up scoring fewer points according to fpl.team as well. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new on YouTube. Let's get this video to over 200 likes and let's keep on pushing towards 23k subscribers and beyond. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, FPL Challenge League, and Drafthound. All of that is there. The same goes for Spotify and Amazon Music. Leave a 5-star review and listen to those podcasts. Follow me on those platforms too. I wish you all the best of luck for Gameweek 31 and the rest of the season. And I'll see you next time.